Houthis mines continue to claim civilians' lives in Hodeidah Gamarrat. Epidemics spread in displaced camps in Marib amid severe shortages of international aid. On International Cancer Awareness Day, Yemeni cancer patients struggle to access proper medical care. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I'm Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. 16 civilians were killed and injured in mine explosion in 5 Gabarrats during the past 2 days. The Yemeni Landmine Observatory stated that a child was killed and another seriously injured as a result of a mine explosion in Hodeidah. Earlier, the observatory announced in a statement that the killing and wounding of 14 civilians, most of which were children and immigrants. A child and 2 women were injured in a brutal assassination attempt targeting the director of the Public Works Office in Eb. Local sources said that child was in front of his house in the darkness area when the criminal asked him to hand the bomb over his grandfather. The driver told the child that it was and stressed on him to hold it well and not to hand it over except to his grandfather or grandmother. Houthi mines continue to claim lives of civilians in Hodeidah Gabarrat. This comes when the rebel militia refuses to hand over maps of landmines to the international community. This report has more.
Landmines in Yemen continue to claim the lives of many innocent civilians. In Hodeidah, a landmine explosion killed a 13-year-old boy. According to an aid group, this incident comes a day after 3 children and 1 woman were critically injured in a landmine explosion. Doctors Without Borders stated that the explosion took place when a child was playing with a landmine. The blast seriously injured that child and 3 others. After that, the 4 casualties were taken to other medical facilities after being treated at a hospital in the besieged city of Taiz. Since the outbreak of the war in 2014, landmines have spread widely in Yemen. The Yemeni landmine records documented the landmine casualties last month, which were about 32 people. According to the database project, the conflict, which is now in its 9th year, is considered as one of the biggest humanitarian disasters in history and claimed the lives of over 150,000 people. Yemen's devastating civil war began when Iranian-backed Houthi rebels took control of the capital Sana'a, in addition to some of the north parts of the country. As the conflict between the Houthis and the Yemeni government becomes more violent, mine laying increases intensely. In Yemen, mines are laid randomly, which makes the process of removing them extremely difficult. Landmines and explosives pose a serious threat to the lives of civilians, specifically children. According to the United Nations in 2021, about 10,000 children were either killed or injured as a result of the conflict in Yemen, and a large number of them were landmine victims. Houthi mines do not only harm civilians physically, but they also destroy their mental health. People in Yemen suffer from psychological and social trauma. Travelers, farmers, children, women, displaced persons, and even animals are not spared from the evils of these dangerous explosives.
A German site revealed that more than 300 archaeological sites in Marib have been exposed to digs. A satellite image published by the website documented part of the violations, attacks and crimes that affected culture and archaeological sites. Displaced people in Marib continue to suffer from fires to natural disasters and now spread of epidemics. All this happened amid a shortage of international aid, a thing which has aggravated a humanitarian situation in those camps.
Access to clean, safe drinking water is essential for the well-being and survival of children and their caregivers in a nation where more than 16 million people, including 8.47 million children, are in urgent need of water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance. Rumaila camp is one of the camps most affected by widespread diseases such as malaria, dengue fever, and parasitic diseases. Recently, smallpox has spread among children and the elderly. While some families continue to use home remedies, the hazards are growing alarmingly without access to professional medical care and assistance.
مخيم سيلة الرميلة يعاني من انعدام الخدمات الصحية في المخيم.
Al-Rumaila camp suffers from the lack of medical services and mobile clinics only visit once every month. The camp suffers from many diseases, including smallpox. 3 families were infected with smallpox and they are suffering the side effects without access to medical care. The expenses of receiving treatment are too high to shoulder.
Al-Rumaila camp is situated 30 kilometers outside of the city in the Ma'rib Governorate's east. More than 294 displaced households are found here, most of whom are from the Hodeidah Governorate. To obtain care in the city, the displaced must travel long distances and pay exorbitant fees, which many cannot afford. Torrential rains and flooding have impacted hundreds of thousands of people across Yemen, inflicting significant damage to essential infrastructure and exposing thousands to potentially fatal disease outbreaks. Floodwaters have swallowed up roads and bridges, poisoned water supplies, and disrupted power and other essential services.
The floods have carried waterborne diseases into our camps. Local authorities and organizations concerned with combating diseases are not doing their part to mitigate the situation or provide solutions.
Hundreds of children who are among the most vulnerable to sickness rely on the intervention of concerned authorities and humanitarian organizations to save them from a health crisis that is developing day by day.
The Arab Center said that the Houthi militia continues to recruit children despite its pledge to the United Nations to end child recruitment. In its report, the center confirmed that the majority of child soldiers in Yemen come from poor families. The report indicated that the Houthi militia has an advanced recruitment system, which includes brokers, Houthi supervisors, and teachers. Gunmen kidnapped 5 engineers from the Ministry of Transport in the city of Aden. Transport Minister said that gun kidnapped 5 engineers from the Civil Aviation Authority while they were going down to Ras Amran area for the supposed of projecting the site. He added that the kidnappers claim ownership of the land on which the future airport construction site is located. On International Cancer Awareness Day, Yemeni patients continue to struggle to have access to proper medical care services. This report has more.
On the World Cancer Day, tens of thousands of Yemenis are haunted by this deadly disease, which claims their lives continuously. Ma'rib is one of the Yemeni governorates that witness a widespread of this sickness among the population. Now, after their suffering for many years, a medical unit was opened for the diagnosis and treatment of cancer in the Commission's hospital in Ma'rib, but it's still unable to provide full care for patients, as the unit lacks many treatments for cancer.
There is an increase in cancer cases with no treatment provided. We ask the Ministry of Health to provide chemotherapy for these patients. We need a hospital, not a unit, because there are many patients.
Thousands of patients were unable to obtain medicine, and their lives became a hell of a disease and poverty as a result of 9 years of war that destroyed the infrastructure and stopped half of the health facilities in the country, and also destroyed the economy. This made thousands of patients unable to bear the cost of travel and treatment abroad, which increased the death rate due to cancer in Yemen.
Cancer patients in Yemen suffer severely. They are unable to get the treatment needed. So, We ask for specialized centers for cancer patients.
According to the Cancer Oncology Center, children and women have been exhausted by cancer in Yemen, and it deprived them of the right to enjoy life, while the number of infected cases has reached more than 800,000 people. People in Yemen not only suffer from the disease, but also from the tragedy to search for a cure and how they're going to afford it. The patients in Yemen are not only fighting their sickness to survive, but they are also fighting poverty, famine, and displacement, in addition to providing the basic necessities and the required medical treatment.
Coming next in the news. The United Nations announces new donors conference in Yemen this month.
نشر ندي ماء من الغيل والغيلة بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء ورجعنا. كنا ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يجي إلا ظهر لأن زحمة ما حد يخلي الجهل يغرق، وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا ما نستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا إلا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدر لأنه ما في معي غزالة.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 هي معها استهلاك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة، عاملة كل شغلك على الماء.
Welcome back. Houthis have imposed new restrictions on Yemeni workforce who want to go abroad seeking jobs. Such an act is added to a long list of repressive measures the rebels keep imposing on the people in the areas under their control. This report has more.
The Iranian-backed Houthi militia has imposed new restrictions on those wishing to travel to work outside of Yemen. According to informed sources, the militia has imposed restrictions on individuals traveling to work overseas by making them pay money and register relatives' data, as well as requiring them to wear specific haircuts in order to fly. The Houthi militia has reportedly returned to targeting Yemenis traveling abroad in search of job opportunities to support their families. The rebel group is said to have imposed a new set of extortionist measures and restrictions, subjecting travelers to sectarian sermons and lectures. The Houthi militia requires travelers with exit visas to work outside of Yemen to pay amounts estimated to be 5,500 riyals, or roughly $10, including 2,000 riyals to be paid to the alleged Houthi Ministry of Expatriates. The requirement comes as part of the militia's efforts to tax individuals who choose to travel outside Yemen in search of a living instead of joining the fighting fronts. The Houthi militia request these payments in exchange for issuing unofficial letters and data forms that demand a listing of family members and relatives inside and outside of Yemen. In addition to stalling the travelers' trips through bureaucratic procedures, the militia evoked travelers' permits if it deemed their haircuts unfit by Houthi standards to enter the building of the so-called General Department of Criminal Evidence, which is controlled by the militia in Sana'a. Houthi opportunistic and arbitrary actions against thousands of Yemeni passengers are a continuation of prior measures implemented on the ground by the militia in early February of the previous year. At the time, the militia enforced rigorous controls on travelers with departure visas to work outside Yemen before it ordered its checkpoints to repatriate thousands of them, claiming they had not obtained prior authorization to leave Houthi-controlled areas.
UNICEF has implemented 2 integrated solar powers water projects in Sada. The project aims to deliver water to 21,000 people in 2 districts in Sada. The interventions were part of emergency health nutrition project activities and were funded by the World Bank. The United Nations announced that a new donor conference on Yemen will be held by the end of this month. The new conference aims to meet the most pressing humanitarian needs in the country. This report has more details.
The United Nations announced its intention to hold a new donors conference to finance the humanitarian response plan in Yemen. Despite the uselessness of these conferences in alleviating the humanitarian disaster or improving food security rates, not to mention the unknown fate of the billions of dollars announced in these conferences. Throughout the years of conflict in Yemen, a number of donor conferences were held to finance the humanitarian response plans, and they were funded by more than $20 billion. However, the fate of these funds remains a mystery, known only to officials of relief agencies and rumors of corruption of the war parties. Several aspects in which the government has failed in the matter of humanitarian aid, perhaps the most prominent of which is the continuation of international organizations transferring the amounts of this aid to the banking sector of the militia or under their control. In addition to that, most of the projects implemented by relief agencies go to areas under their control, which confirms that most of the support goes in favor of the Houthis, under several pretexts, although most of the displaced and homeless people left the Houthi areas to the areas of the government. Despite the Houthi abuses of relief agencies by looting food warehouses and preventing distribution, monopolizing most of the humanitarian aid, and preventing the implementation of the food programs, the government's failure to benefit from these confessions and violations contributed to the continued benefit of the Houthis from the humanitarian aid and the large liquidity in foreign exchange which is provided to them.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Houthis' mines continue to claim civilians' lives in Hodeidah governorate. Epidemics spread in displaced camps in Marib amid severe shortages of international aid. On International Cancer Awareness Day, Yemeni cancer patients struggle to access proper medical care. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.